Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Mike. I'm the alumni coordinator for the College of Law. And today I'm joined by my colleague Jian, who's in the background, and we both work within the marketing team of the college. We just want to welcome and thank everyone for joining us in what we hope is the first of a webinar series. Before we begin, we acknowledge and celebrate the first Australians on whose traditional lands we meet and pay our respect to the elders past, present, and emerging. I just want to quickly run through the proceedings for this session before passing it over to our host, Sebastian. Sebastian will host a discussion with our alumni panelists for roughly about 40 minutes. And during this time, you can send through any questions at any point using the Q&A option on your screens. And I greatly encourage everyone to take advantage of our amazing and experienced alumni panel by sending through any questions that you can think of or any questions that you want to ask. However, we will only address these questions after the main discussion has taken place. So yeah, roughly after about 40 minutes or so. The Q&A session will commence after the main discussion for about 10 to 15 minutes, and we will try to get through as many of your questions as we can within the allotted time. And without further ado, I'll hand over the floor now to Sebastian to kick us off.
Thanks so much, Mike. My name is Sebastian. I'm in my final year of a Law and International Security Studies degree at the ANU, and I'll be moderating today's session. It's my absolute pleasure to be joined by three alumni of the ANU. I'm here with Farzana Choudhury from the Canberra Community Law, Mabel Lim from Colquhoun Murphy, and Jack Tyson from Ernst Young. Welcome, everybody. I thought I'd start off today just by getting everyone to introduce themselves and walk through what you did and studied at the ANU and what you're currently doing now.
Hi, everyone. My name is Mabel. So I studied at the ANU in 2004. I commenced an LLB and I finished up in 2008. I also ended up doing a master's in professional accounting. I'm currently the principal lawyer at Colquhoun Murphy, which is a generalist practice. We do most areas of law. We practice in most areas of law. We just don't touch criminal law or family law with a 10-foot pole. But very happy to be here.
Hi, everyone. My name's Farzana, and I studied a graduate diploma in legal practice at the ANU. That was in 2013. And shortly after that, I did a Master of Laws at the ANU. So I work at a community legal centre called Canberra Community Law, and I run the disability discrimination law practice there.
Hi everyone, I'm Jack. I studied arts and law at ANU and I finished in 2018. I work at Ernst Young. I'm a non-practicing lawyer, I'm admitted, but yeah, I don't practice. In terms of what I do at EY, I'm in their advisory group and I do a lot of strategic risk work that includes cybersecurity, technology and technology risk and assurance, and at the moment with a lot of program management focus, both with public and private clients.
Thanks so much. So I thought I'd first question, a lot of students don't really have much of a plan coming out of uni, exactly what career path they're going to be taking. I was wondering whether you planned to go down the path you did. Was it sort of structured or was it more, and what inspired you to go down it?
So I might start. So I've always been really interested in human rights and social justice issues. And so I thought hopefully one day I might be able to work in that space, but it's not something that I sort of set out knowing that that's exactly what I've ended up doing. I feel quite fortunate that I do get to work at a community legal centre now. I think one of the reasons I wanted to work at a community legal centre was because I was very interested in being able to use my law degree and the skills around the legal profession to be able to support people who are facing disadvantage. While I was at uni, and this is back in Sydney, I did a fair bit of volunteering with other community legal centres and other not-for-profit organisations. I also had the opportunity to run some community legal education sessions for a Bangladeshi women's group on issues like the court system and domestic and family violence. And from that experience, it made me realise how much you can actually do with your law degree by working in the not-for-profit sector. I didn't actually start out at Canberra Community Law, though. Once I finished uni, I pretty much thought maybe, you know, might want to maybe practice as a lawyer, but I also had a bit of an interest in policy. So I applied for a number of graduate roles in the public service. And so I started off in the public service and then moved to the community sector maybe about 3 years after that. So it's what I was wanting to hopefully do, but certainly not where I started, and I was open to other opportunities as well.
Yeah, I think I was a bit of the same actually, Farzana, because I had no idea what I wanted to do, even towards the end of my degree. But I had done internships and volunteering at various community legal centres around in the ACT in my time at uni. And I think it got to the point where I think I applied at some point to one of the community legal centres to start a graduate program, but they weren't offering. And so I kind of found my way into a private firm and then started to really like the work. I think for me, one of the things that really drive me is seeing is the interactions with clients on a day-to-day basis. When you're in a generalist small practice, you see clients so often, and I really enjoy that and get a lot of satisfaction out of that. So I think it evolved over time. If you ask me, 15 years ago, if I knew I'd be in this position, I'd be like, no way. So yeah, so that's my story.
Yeah, so I took I think a bit of a zigzag approach. It's not something that I really planned. It just happened. I knew a few things though. So I'd been working as a paralegal, doing casual work while I was finishing my law degree, and I knew that I was interested in kind of the corporate world and corporate law at that stage. And I was getting a bit of a taste of it through my legal experience, which was good. But then right at the last minute, when I graduated, EY came on the radar, and I was a bit hesitant. To be honest, I didn't know much at all about EY, what they did, and so that there was a lot of uncertainty there. But and I do kind of wish that I had connected with someone with a legal background who'd gone down the non-law route, and specifically maybe the Big Four firm or consulting. But yeah, I took the leap and started with EY, and it's been a pretty wild ride, to be honest. But in terms of how I got there, I was just really open to opportunities when I was finishing, which I thought was, I had my eyes open to that because I didn't have an option set up through a more traditional clerkship type approach.
Fantastic. Picking up with what you were saying, Jack, what does a consultant do on a day-to-day basis? I'm sure a lot of people have an idea of a bit more of what a solicitor's role entails, but what does a consultant do, and what are some of the misconceptions?
Yeah, totally. Great question. I knew this one would come up straight away. So yeah, I mean, a lot of people say, what do consultants do? No one knows what they do. And I think there are probably a few reasons for that. And nowadays, Big Four, so EY, Deloitte, KPMG, and PwC, they almost do everything, which is hard even for me to get my head around. But I think it's important to move away from the maybe more traditional view that they're accounting firms. They're definitely not anymore, just accounting firms. In fact, their business advisory work, I think, typically makes up a much larger portion of their practice than the accounting work does. And so I think, yeah, there are loads of opportunities for lots of different types of professionals, but I guess relevant to here with people with a legal background. I'm in a strategic risk team, but there are, in terms of the content matter, it's probably not so clear. So the firm has a bunch of different methodologies and kind of functional skill groups, which I know are tricky terms. But I think coming from a legal background, you really, the skills that I use on a day-to-day basis are really kind of core legal skills, like identifying issues, really thorough and good critical analysis. Those skills, I think, are really relevant to what you do in an advisory setting in a Big Four.
Thank you. I'll open it up to you, Farzana and Mabel. Are there any misconceptions that you think pop up with your career path?
When I first started out as a graduate, I think I remember at the time watching a lot of legal shows, and you know, you'd have a paralegal, and there'd be a legal question, and you'd have an hour, and by the end of that watching hour, the paralegal has all the answers, and it's absolutely spot on, and they win the case, and that's the end of the day. That's certainly not the case in practice at all. There are, you know, I remember once being joked at by saying that, you know, a senior associate when I was a graduate said to me, I really expected that within the hour. And I was like, I can't, this would take 2 whole days to do. So, you know, so that bubble was burst very early on in the piece. And I think, you know, a lot of people think that, you know, you always win. Well, you don't. The wins are great, but the losses are, you know, pretty emotional. And I think with any matter where you are invested in clients, you really take a lot of emotion with you. And I think that was something that I didn't expect coming into practice. Yeah.
I guess one of the issues with working at a community legal centre is that often people don't actually know what a community legal centre is. And so it means that people might not actually think about that being a viable career option. Often people, well, they either haven't heard of a community legal centre, or when they hear that you work at a community legal centre, they might think that's the same as legal aid, which it isn't. Even though both types of organisations are helping people who are experiencing disadvantage, the models are different, the areas of laws that we practice in are different. And I guess community legal centres are the independent we sort of help people to more, I guess, a more grassroots sort of level, but it's not just the legal advice that you're providing, it's a lot broader than that. So a lot of the work that we do is also around law reform and community education and working with other stakeholders as well. So I guess the first misconception is that people might actually know what a community legal centre is. And then for those who do know what a community legal centre is, I think often it's not necessarily seen as a viable career option. Perhaps because of the limited resources that people who work at community legal centres have to work with, and the pay is, you know, typically not going to be as much as if you were to work at a flashy law firm at a high level. So there are those things to sort of consider. But I'm obviously working as a community lawyer. I've been here for almost 4 years now, and the wage has been fine. I am getting by fine. It's not like I'm living in poverty or anything like that. So it's completely manageable, even though you might not be earning the big bucks. I think it's still incredibly rewarding work. And so it depends on what you're interested in.
Fantastic. Now, Mabel, you were saying before you did a few internships during your time at the ANU. How do you think they helped you with your employability?
Yeah, they did and they didn't. I think one of the things that my work or my time at the Community Legal Centre really opened my eyes to how to deliver legal advice. And I think when you come out of law school, you sort of have all this head knowledge about, you know, how do you answer a law question, applying an IRAC, well, a client's not going to appreciate what an IRAC is. You know, a client's going to think, well, what can I do? What are my practical steps moving forward? And I think for me, that was one of the most eye-opening things about taking part in these internships, is watching, because the training is good too. Like, they get you to sit down and watch the solicitors deliver advice to clients. And that to me was invaluable. And I really appreciated that, because these were highly intelligent people who devoted their lives to community legal work. And I remember taking that away with me, and I try and apply that in my practice as much as I can. So I think in that way it's really helped. But obviously the different areas of law that a lot of private firms don't generally practice in. So in that way it wasn't as transferable, but there are still transferable skills. So that was what I took away from it. Yeah.
And Jack Farzana, did you get into any internships, extracurricular activities at your time at ANU that helped you today?
I'll go first. I'm actually trying to think. Even though it was only a couple of years ago that I finished at ANU, it feels like a lifetime ago. I think there are a few opportunities with some of those elective courses that were really useful. I remember there was one with, there was like an extracurricular administrative law project where one of my lecturers, she actually had a live case in the federal court, and it was concerning citizenship, and there was a group from the cohort that were able to get involved, and I think getting involved in things like that are really insightful. Gives you a taste of what it's really like, the type of material that you'll deal with, and I mean, indeed, there in terms of submissions and the court process, that was great insight. So that's one that I can think of.
Great. Now, I think Farzana's just having some technical difficulties and just dropped out for a moment. But while we wait for her to come back, I thought I might ask, looking back now, would there be anything that you recommend, Mabel and Jack, for students to do that might help their employability, whether it's clerkships or volunteering?
Yeah, I mean, I certainly think that it's, hi Farzana, you're back. Yeah, so in terms of, no, that's all good. So things about, so we're just talking about what sort of extracurricular activities do we think that will enhance the students' employability when they graduate. I mean, I think any work is crucial work. I think don't discount what you do, because
I totally agree with that one.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I mean, I think a lot of people think, oh, if I don't go through this route, I'll never get that job. Well, that is not true. You know, there's so many ways to get to where you want to be, and the more you put yourself in a mold and you think, well, I have to do this step and then do that step and then get to that step, well, you're just setting yourself up for disappointment. You just have to appreciate that everyone has a different journey, and you will get there. But you know, your definition of getting there in 10 years' time is not what it might be right now. But you know, if there's a spectrum of work and passion, and you're somewhere sort of nestled where you are working as close to the things that you're passionate about, then you're fine. Like, don't, you know, forget the stress about, you know, needing to make it to this particular level by a particular time. So on that count, the long and the short of it is, yes, if you can find legal work, that will make it very helpful, because employers do tend to prefer candidates with that experience. But that is not to say that, you know, it's a be all end all. Sometimes it is the luck of the draw. And you might be able to find yourself in a way that will get you into a legal role eventually. But you don't, you know, always have to start out having all that. But look, in our firm, for instance, as an example, we have, you know, first year students who start with us as clerks, and they'll carry on until they get to third year. And often they will find themselves in our paralegal program. And then when they get to the end of that, then, you know, they will either choose to do something else. and they might go off to be justice associates, they might go off to be lawyers in different firms, or they might end up with us as graduates as well, and then move on from there. So that's, traditionally, I suppose, the steps that a lot of people take if they want to get into private practice. But, it's not rote by no means.
Yeah, I totally want to pick up on some of that, Mabel. So
yeah, go ahead.
I agree, and I mean you're definitely the authority here. Your partner level, but sure, ideal to have legal experience if that's indeed what you want to do. But I mean, I remember when I was a student, sometimes that work was really hard to come by for a whole bunch of reasons. I mean, Canberra's not the biggest place, so there's only a handful of those kind of ideal part-time or casual paralegal positions at any one time, and it might just be difficult to see when they pop up. So I mean, while ideal, definitely wouldn't discount yourself if you don't have that type of experience. So I know that something that EY is particularly passionate about in terms of work experience is anything in a customer service type role is really valuable, because consulting's a people business, and I mean I think that's really the same for the legal industry as well. It's about building a relationship with your clients, and if you're able to do that really well in a different context, really there's no reason why you can't, those skills aren't transferable across, whether it's consulting, whether it's I think law, or whether or not it's a different, say, industry role. Just wanted to pick up that one because I think that comes across quite a lot. But I think there are some really powerful stories that you can bring from those roles that impress employers. And as an example, getting very granular, but I heard that I think a little while ago there was someone who joined as was interviewing as a physiotherapist, and made some amazing analogies for a role in internal audit. Yeah, that's just an example, but I think there are lots of opportunities.
Yeah, no, 100% agree around, being able to have those transferable skills that might not necessarily be in a legal role, but other roles as well. Customer service, definitely. Any role that involves admin or any kind of research would also be really helpful if you're wanting to pursue a legal career. One of the things that I'd also suggest current ANU law students do is consider taking advantage of some of the clinical placement electives that are available. So at Canberra Community Law, we have a clinical placement. It sounds like, Mabel, you might have been involved in.
It was awesome, best thing ever.
So it's fantastic because you get that experience of working with other lawyers and in a legal practice environment, but you also get course credit for it. And I think that is awesome too, because often, it's great to do all this volunteering work, but you might need to have a part-time job at the same time or balance heaps of other responsibilities. And often there are heaps of internships, but you just might not have the capacity to because of your own personal circumstances. And so I think being able to do these courses where it's actually, study and really practical experience, but you get course credit, I think is something really valuable. So Canberra Community Law has it. The Youth Law Centre, which is part of Legal Aid, also has a clinical placement, and I think there's a Kimberley Community Legal Service placement as well that's offered through ANU. So definitely find out what you can about it and apply for those sorts of roles, because I do think the experience is invaluable. I did my undergraduate law degree at University of New South Wales, and I did a clinical placement like the one that is offered at ANU. And that's something that really did inspire me to consider working at a community legal centre down the track. So yeah, it's definitely something to keep in mind. And sorry, before my internet dropped out on me and I had to start, I'm actually tethering to my mobile phone now. We've just gotten some new internet and it's just playing up a bit. But I was talking about communication with the clients that I have at Canberra Community Law. And often English might not be their first language, or they may have very low levels of literacy. And so we really try and be as simple and plain English as possible. For some of our clients, we communicate advice by drawing pictures. One of the first clients I had in the disability discrimination role was a person that did not speak at all. He'd had a stroke, and I'd gone to see him in a group home, and you can imagine that it'd be very difficult to communicate complex information when the person you're speaking to basically communicates by typing on an iPad. So being able to really condense your advice and make it as accessible as possible is really important, not just for when you're working at a community legal centre with clients who might not have, you know, have the same level of literacy, but I think that any clients, you know, they want to have the information they need to know so that they're aware of their rights, obligations, and what they can do next to resolve an issue.
Thank you. Some really interesting experiences there. I was going to jump back to you, Farzana. Are there any electives, you know, you mentioned some of the extracurriculars, the Kimberley's program. Are there any other electives that you would recommend that might complement your sort of career path besides those? Oh, pardon.
Yeah, so sorry, I interrupted you there, but well, I basically just picked subjects that I thought I'd be interested in and didn't really think too much about whether it would help with a future career. But I did happen to study discrimination law, and that's you know, for obvious reasons has been helpful now. But I do think that a lot of the learning is really on the job sorts of learnings. So most of what I learnt in uni was very helpful for giving a general sense of, you know, how to research or what the broad concepts are. But when it comes down to the nitty gritty, what you need to know is really going to depend on what areas of practice your firm practices in, and drawing on the experience of your colleagues and any precedents that they use for providing advice.
I'd totally echo that one. Yeah. And I mean, as well, just to throw something out there, Farzana, you were mentioning before about the different ways that you communicate advice to clients. For me, the most common way we I guess communicate products to our clients is through PowerPoint, and usually not Word. So it's very visual. It's a different way of communicating, and you've got to be more effective with the words you do use, because I mean, too many words on a slide doesn't look good. So yeah, I just wanted to throw that one in the mix.
I have found that like ethics has been an interesting one for the clients that we see. And in my previous role before I joined Canberra, I was working as an in-house government lawyer, and I found that contracts was helpful. I did quite a bit of IP, but I didn't actually take the IP elective when I was at uni, and you know, it's totally fine. Don't feel like you're limiting yourself by not picking certain electives or even doing particularly well at certain electives.
No, I agree. Like, I didn't even touch succession when I was in uni as a subject, and I now lead the team on that. So yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I think the skills behind it are really the things that count, particularly research and kind of building your writing skills. They're the ones that will really take you through.
That's some really great advice. I can say from personal experience, I've sort of been worried that I've chosen the wrong elective. So it's good to know that it's never too late and you can you learn on the job. One question I had was about the transition for a lot of students in their last year of university. They might be worried about the transition from university life to work life. Mabel, maybe you can start. What was that like for you, and would you have any recommendations?
Yeah, I struggled the first 2 years, waking up at the same time and going back at the same time, and having to wake up again early in the morning. From being a night owl was really hard. I think in the first month, I was just completely exhausted physically and emotionally. But I think just be patient with yourself. You know, the first 3 to 5 years of practice, or of your career, it's probably the hardest, because you're transitioning from studying and maybe working part-time to actually working full-time, and some of you will continue to study as you work in your early years, and it's really about finding your balance and not pushing yourself too hard, and just maintaining well-being. I think a lot of the times I probably didn't look after my well-being so much in my first 3 to 5 years. I think I was very eager to please, to the point where I think maybe my emotional state took a bit of a toll. But we all hit rock bottom at some point, you know, but you just have to be mature enough to identify that and find strategies to move forward and deal with that, because everyone's going to face challenges on that front. I don't think anyone can say that they had a very smooth ride in the first 5 years. Farzana, Jack.
Yeah, totally. So when I started full-time work, it was a fairly big transition because I'd gone from living in Sydney to moving to Canberra, moving at home, and then obviously starting full-time work is quite different from studying uni full-time. I do miss that really long summer break that you get after exams around November.
Yeah.
Don't get that anymore.
I don't remember that anymore.
Yeah, it feels like a while ago now. So take advantage. That's right. Take advantage of your holidays. Yeah, and also I really miss just seeing my friends at uni like every day and catching up for lunch, and it's a bit harder to do that when you're working full time unless you sort of are working, some of your friends are working down the street, for example. So yeah, I think, you know, do try and keep in touch with your friends. I find it really interesting to, you know, just chat to my other friends and supports around what they're doing, because we've all sort of done something a little bit different. And the other advice is also make sure you're doing things that you enjoy. You know, maybe your first job isn't going to be something that you love, and that's okay. But if you've got hobbies or you know, other activities you can get involved in, I think that can also help to keep balanced. So I play in a lot of various bands outside of work, and that helps to keep me balanced, but also means I can have chats to people who aren't necessarily lawyers, which I think can also be a good break as well.
Yeah, I definitely echo a lot of that. The two big things for me, I mean, sorry, to start with, the transition was a bit rough. Full-time work, yeah, I mean, Monday to Friday, there's no time off in between lectures, and you can't stack all your shifts, so you get a day to chill. But I think my biggest piece of advice is lean on your colleagues and your friends that are probably in the same cohort. They know what what you're going through, and they can kind of provide some tools to help you on the way. And the other thing, Farzana kind of mentioned it, is that keep up what you do outside of work. It's important to keep those things going, because in terms of the transition, I mean, if you just work, at some point, that's not going to go well. So I think it's really important to disconnect at the end of the day, whether that's, I don't know, through exercise or whatever you might do, sport, music. I think there's a real, and in hindsight now, maybe I think that there's a real reason why employers ask about your life and extracurriculars, and that's maybe why they care about that stuff, because they think, okay, well, great, this person might, you know, have some interests outside of work, and that'll hold them in good stead when they start working.
No, you're spot on that, Jack. That's exactly why we ask this question. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, in that case, what are some of the extracurriculars you found fantastic a way to de-stress and sort of cope with that 9-to-5 lifestyle?
So I've tried many different. Sorry.
Cooking. Go on, Jack. I'll let you answer this.
Probably opposite to cooking. I was going to say I've tried all these different like gym type situations. So at one stage I was doing almost like powerlifting stuff, and then I was doing like F45, and now I'm at another gym called The Den. So I just keep like rotating what I'm doing with fitness, it seems, and then I catch up with friends quite regularly on the weekend.
Yeah, so for me, it's become a massive band geek, and I think it's really good because if I've got a rehearsal after work, it means I'm not going to stay at work till a ridiculous hour, and it's really forcing me to switch off and try something different. So yeah, I play in a brass band and an orchestra and do various musical things around that. Also, actually, you know, I was going to the gym, but now they're all shut at the moment. So I've been relying on some online videos instead. But it's good, but it's not quite the same. Although I have been able to try and do it at the same time with another friend of mine, so that we can try and stay motivated together. Cooking's good. Trying to do a bit more reading, and yeah, just connecting with friends.
Yeah, I'm kind of the same. I mean, I guess for me as well, when I first arrived, I was an international student, and you know, I really struggled with. Well, I had a lot of Australian friends from college, and I also had my own international friends and things like that. So just trying to strike a balance. But for me, it was also faith. Like for me, I had a community in my church and things like that. So those things really grounded me a lot, and keep going back to it. Yeah, so that's me.
It's good to hear that work isn't all consuming then.
No,
and
it can't
it'd be good when the gyms start up again. Mabel, this question is for you. You talking about extracurriculars as something you might look for in a potential employee. What else are some really, I guess, key things on a resume that stand out to you?
Yeah. Look, it's an interesting question, because we've seen a lot of people come through in our time, and a common misconception on this is that, you know, if you've got good grades, you're going to be a good lawyer. Wrong. There are plenty of people with good grades who actually, frankly, don't have the knack for it. And we kind of have to journey with them through that. But there are three things really that I look for. The first is teachability. I think if a lawyer or a graduate comes through our firm, we want to know that when we give criticism or we give feedback, that it's going to go the right way. And you know, people are going to apply what they learn, and a lot of that is a bit more EQ based rather than IQ based. I think, you know, certainly having some level of acumen is important, but also maturity. And when I say maturity, I also mean sort of resilience. So really being in a position where, you know, if you're faced with a difficult task, you don't put it into the bottom drawer. You actually look for constructive ways to solve a problem. And then when you come back to us, you're coming back to us with solutions rather than what do I do now? So to me, that's really important. But it's not something that you can actually demonstrate in a resume, because that actually comes with practice. So, and this is where I think relevant work experience becomes helpful, because amongst the community or the legal community, we all sort of know what each other, you know, what other firms are doing and how they run their business and what sort of level of, or the quality of work that comes out of those firms. So that if you came from those firms as well, we have a good idea of what sort of training you've received. So it's a bit difficult, but quite often, if someone's coming to me fresh, we're really looking at what your experience is, what you're like, and are you someone that we could teach? Yeah.
Thank you. Some fantastic advice there. That's worth noting down. And this one's for Jack. Staying on the recruitment process questions. When you were going through your job applications, is there any advice that you would have given to your old self at that time? Was there anything that you would have done differently, or what was really good that you were doing?
Yeah, first one is definitely stress less, I think. And maybe the second and third are also stress less. Because in terms of my job application process for EY, and I think it's pretty common across the firm, is that I went in a bulk recruitment round, and there was an assessment center where you go and you do an interview and some group tasks, and I think there are actually maybe 2 interviews, but they were about different things. And I think at the end of the day, they really just wanted to get to know me. And so while it was important to prep for what I could see, and in terms of questions that they might have about me, and they kind of give you some information and kind of the standard stuff you find on the careers section of maybe the website. it's important to prepare for that. But otherwise, I mean, I think, and maybe it's echoing a little bit of what Mabel was saying before. I found the process was really about getting to know kind of who I am, my strengths, and my skill set, and things. I really feel like a point that Mabel said before, teachability. I think that's definitely an important theme. You know, be humble in the process, and you know, you don't have all the answers, but this is who you are, and you know, you have the potential type thing. I think would have been good to maybe take a step back and reflect a little bit about what I'm really trying to achieve here and what they're trying to achieve. And really at the end of the day, if the particular job process, if the application doesn't work out, then it's not the end of the world. There are so many other opportunities. Yeah.
Fantastic. And Farzana, do you have any thoughts on those questions, on maybe how a student can make themselves stand out through their applications, or perhaps the opposite? What sort of is a bad sign that might come out of an application?
Oh, so I think it can often be quite obvious where a person applying hasn't really done their research about the role that they're going for or about the organisation. So I think certainly the applications that stand out are where for a community legal centre, you know, somewhere in the human rights spaces where a person seems to have a genuine interest and knowledge of the practice or of the centre. And there are some really easy ways to do a bit of that research to use that for a cover letter. Going to the website, there'll always be an about, you know, X firm or X centre, which you can have a look at to see what the areas of practice are. Whenever I applied for jobs and got to the interview stage, I'd also I'd just over prepare. I think that's just how I am. So I'd have a read of the annual reports and the corporate strategies for any organisation I was going for an interview for, to make sure I was aware of what the particular values of an organisation are and the sorts of matters that I might end up working on. And I think that can be something that's impressive to a recruitment panel if you're already across that sort of thing. And also just perhaps proofreading your cover letters in your resumes as well. Like, it's really small and it's not going to be a deal breaker if you happen to have a typo here and there, but you know, if you're going to be working at a law firm, for example, or most jobs, having good written communication skills is really important. And you know, first impressions are important as well. So read through your applications before sending. You know, if you're working on an application late at night, maybe, unless there's a deadline, maybe it's worth leaving it till the next day and reading it with fresh eyes before sending, because sometimes you'll just pick things up and then, yeah.
I think that's a great one. Leave a day and then self-review.
Yeah.
I mean,
and it's really really hard to do that, especially around, you know, when you get to your final year of the law and you're just applying for all the jobs madly, and it can get really exhausting. But I think it is worth, if you have the luxury of time, just give it a bit of extra time and try and put forward the best application that you can, rather than just pumping out the same resume for all the jobs.
No, I resonate with that, Farzana. I think on two things. Firstly, you know, it's obvious to an employer when you're putting in one of 200, because you're just doing a merge field and you're saying, dear Colquhoun Murphy, dear this, and it's just obvious. And secondly, I think what I actually did when I came out of it, so firstly, I was an international student, so that was already not working in my favor when I graduated. And then it was 2008 that I graduated, which was the GFC, just coming out of it. So there were hire freezes, etc., etc. What I did was I went to the ACT Law Society website, and you can do this at any law society in any state or territory you wish to practice in. And I chose 6 firms, just 6, that I really wanted to work at based on their areas of practice. And I tailored 6 very specific cover letters and resumes, and I sent it their way. And one came back. And it was this one, the one that I'm still at. So, you know, I think there's a bit of a good news story there for anyone. You just need to put a little bit of effort into it. And, you know, a lot of people think, oh, I have to apply for the Big Four and that's the only way I'm going to go. Well, here's a plug for the small firm, because, you know, you will get to see so many different areas of law, and provided they're hiring, I think it's one to look for. And again, you know, when you're going for an interview, with a law firm particularly, I think one of the useful things you can do is, particularly if they're, say, you know, actively in litigation or something like that, go to Ausley and search for the firm and look for the cases that they've you know, been involved in recently. And then
yeah, I think that's a great one.
Yeah, say, oh, I you know, how did, and because you can ask us what we do and we'll tell you the rote answer, but wouldn't it be good if you could say, actually, I was really attracted to your firm because I read this, you know, decision, and it so happened that the partner that had carriage of the matter is the one that's interviewing you. Boom, you know, that's really impressive. So that's, you know, I just completely resonate with that, Farzana.
That's a really good advice. I'm sure a lot of people with COVID-19 at the moment are a bit worried about going into the job market.
Yeah.
So it's good to know that, you know, we're not the first to be doing it, and that there is a sort of light at the end of the tunnel.
The other piece of advice, sorry, it's not quite on point with the question, but something which someone told me a while ago in terms of thinking about applying for jobs that you're interested in, is to look for job advertisements for positions that maybe you're not qualified for now, but that you might like to do in the future. Have a look at the selection criteria and what sort of experience they're after, and focus on that rather than focusing on that big job, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think that's a great approach. Something else I wanted to just throw into the mix is that I think it's really great when you can connect with someone at the place where you want to work, or at least kind of get close to that. And I feel like the way you can do that at ANU is through the careers fairs. And I know there's a law specific one, but I think there's another broader one, and I think it's really invaluable insight, actually speaking to employees of those organisations. And I mean, to plug EY, I guess, if we're there, then you could talk to us about how a lawyer might fit into the organisation and the range of different things they can do. I mean, I've spoken just, I guess, fairly narrowly about what I do in terms of risk advisory work, but I know lawyers at EY that do people advisory. There's lots of workforce management stuff. I know a couple that are in tax, and there's a few that even are in Sydney working in the EY specific legal team. So, but I mean, I guess the point I'm trying to make is that if you don't engage in terms of finding people to talk to, then you might not know that those are all different things that someone could do at EY.
Fantastic. I might push over to the Q&A from the students now, just so we have enough time. The first question, Farzana, I'll direct to you. It's, does the Canberra Community Law employ international students?
We're not specifically prohibited from employing international students. I'm not sure if that's looking at for volunteering or not, but sometimes there may be some visa issues. So if you're on a particular visa, it's just good to double check. It's not something that I specifically come across. But we're not like the public service where where for some roles you need to be an Australian citizen, for example.
Thank you. This next question is a bit longer. It's from a later year student. They're currently doing an internship with a community legal service in remote Western Australia. They were accepted into the Aurora internship program, but it has been informed that no organisations can host interns at this time. They were also accepted into the ANU Environmental Law Clinic for semester 2, but was informed that the experience will be different to what they applied for. Opening up to the panel, do you have any advice on what to do given that internships have dried up? Should they graduate this year, or perhaps delay and buy more time to get more legal experience?
So just with respect to the environmental law placement, I think it would be worth perhaps asking a few more questions of the convener around exactly how the course will change. So at Canberra Community Law, we will also host ANU law students, and the course has changed this year because of COVID-19, where students would usually be coming on site and working with a lawyer. The focus for this semester has been largely on doing case studies and a research paper that can assist with the legal practice that we've got here. Next semester, my understanding is it's going to be a little bit different and hopefully have more opportunities for sort of one-on-ones with a lawyer in the practice and some more research tasks. So it is a bit different, but it is something that we're trying our best to work around. So probably ask a few more questions around the clinical placement. We also do have an admin intern program where we'll have volunteer law students usually come in one day or one afternoon a week. And unfortunately, because our physical office is closed to the public, we haven't been able to have those volunteers. So it does make it a little bit challenging. And I suppose you can't really apply for internships that don't exist. So you could, use the time to perhaps see if there are ways you can, volunteer online or in a way that doesn't involve physically visiting an office.
And Jack and Mabel, do you have any advice on whether someone should graduate this year and go into a post-COVID job market, or is it worth taking that extra year to get a bit more legal experience?
It's a tricky one.
It is. I mean, if I can just answer this, I look into the future with this. So I actually attended a course last year where we had a recruiter come speak to us, and he made some observations coming out of the 2008 GFC. He said that, when the GFC hit in 2008, and with the hiring freezes and everything, there was a phenomenon that occurred 5 years later. And that was that you usually, by the time you get to 5 years post qualifications, you are at a level in your career where you have done all the hard yards, technicalities, and you've got a bit of seniority. But 5 years later, from the 2008 cohort, so around 2012, 2013, there were none of these lawyers out there. And so law firms were going to market looking for 5 to 7 year PQE lawyers, and there were none available in the market. So they were just throwing money at them to try and get them into firms. So, I mean, it's a hard question to answer, because what you will find as a cohort is that 5 years later, there's not going to be a lot of you in private practice. And you're going to be, the unicorns who are hard to find. So yes, I suppose it might be a good idea to, hold off until, but if you've got an opportunity, grab it. Because you might come to a point in your career where you're 5 to 7 years down, there's not going to be a lot of you out there. So that's something to take into account for the job market, I think. But Jack, you might have.
Yeah, no, I think it's a really tricky one.
Yeah.
I mean, I can see pros and cons to both, but I think ultimately it's definitely a personal decision. So, but I think it is, as Mabel said, I think it's important to look ahead.
Yeah.
So if you take that year and you don't graduate, then I would be seriously thinking about what am I going to map out my time until I graduate if I delay it. And as well, I'd be thinking about maybe creating a plan and thinking about the different types of maybe graduate programs or opportunities that are kind of set in stone, things that happen at particular points in time, and just so that you can maybe ground yourself in that commitment if you decide to prolong graduating. Yeah.
Thank you. We have 4 more questions, or a few more actually, so I'll try and race through them. First is from Ellen. She's interested in becoming a legal research assistant. Any specific advice on tips for this career pathway?
You might be able to answer that, Sebastian.
Perhaps, yeah. I guess I'd say don't always apply to things that are advertised. I got my job 6 months after I put a cold call in. And often a lot of these positions aren't advertised because there's already so many applications coming through. So something as simple as look for some maybe smaller mid-tier firms or barristers' chambers around Canberra and put in an application and try and tailor it a little bit to show that your interest, and I guess hope for the best. You'll never know what will come out a few months down the track.
That's great.
Any advice, and I'm interested in this actually, on tailoring cover letters and resumes? Farzana, you were mentioning before, it was Mabel, you're saying you put in a few really good applications. How would you pick out information from a website? Or
I mean, you can tell a lot about
target.
Yeah. I mean, it's easy to say that. I think one of the most impressive ones that I've come across was one where we had a graduate who didn't have, I think he was coming from the public service at the time, but he was contemplating coming into private practice. I mean, it helped that he had good grades, but at the same time, he made an observation about our firm. At the time, we had 2 lawyers of a diverse background and plenty of other lawyers who spoke different languages. And he was a bit of a linguist himself. And he said, you know, what really strikes me about your firm is that you're all very diverse. And that, I wasn't in the partnership at the time, but it really sang to the partners at the time, because that was obviously what they were hoping to achieve. And somehow just fixating on the ethos really drew him into the fold, just as an example of what sort of tailoring might occur. But similarly, you know, things like, as I said before, looking up the work that these firms have done and have been involved in, and saying, you know, I know that you've been in this particular case and that's a particular area of law I'm really interested in, that sort of thing.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I won't talk to the legal part of it. I'll talk to the non-practicing part of it. I think it's important to figure out what your potential employer is doing in the market. So from a Big Four kind of EY perspective, you know, they're big firms with big resources, and they do a lot of stuff. So if you've got a particular interest in, I don't know, something came up today was blockchain, you could research into how EY is. I mean, sometimes it goes over my head too. But you could have a look at the type of work they're doing in blockchain. There's a lot of kind of articles and things that the bigger corporate employers generate, which I think sometimes you can, I mean, while, you know, it's a big website, I guess, you can actually drill down into what particular geographies are doing. And a sneaky way that I sometimes go about it is I get on LinkedIn and I try and figure out like who would maybe be a senior leader or a partner in the team that I'm looking at. And then I look at their LinkedIn profile. I might send them a request to connect, and then you can look at what they've posted on LinkedIn. And so I actually think LinkedIn's an amazing tool for lots of different reasons. But I mean, one of them is that you almost get direct insight to, like there's almost a direct connection between you and the person. But yeah, I think that's a way to really draw out some insight that you could use in, for example, your cover letter.
Thank you. I'm afraid we're gonna have to go to the last question. There's one, just wondering what networking looks like in the legal industry. It's someone coming from a commerce background, and they're wondering whether it's similar or a little bit different. What does networking look like for each of you?
So it might be a bit different for me from other firms, but for me, the networking is largely reaching out to other stakeholders that work with people who are facing barriers. So other community organisations. I'm involved in quite a few different sector-wide engagements. and in various forums. So often it's just about connecting with other people, but can also help the clients that we assist. I think that's quite different from, you know, corporate networking, which I don't really have much, if any, experience. I find networking to be kind of awkward, but you know, also see, yeah, which is interesting because I'm actually quite an extrovert, but when it comes to, you know, networking for a work purpose or for personal gain, it just seems a bit, yeah, uncomfortable for me. I don't know if that's the experience that other people have, but it's, yeah, I don't do that all that much.
It is sometimes very awkward and uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think in the small firm context, it's quite similar. It's really engaging with referrers and, you know, having relationships with different practices. So whilst, you know, you might act in a particular area, there might be an accountant or a financial planner that you know, would like to refer your clients onto. Again, but within the legal sense, then when you go to court, you're sort of, you know, nudging shoulders with your peers. So that's a bit of networking there that's happening anyway. And of course, you know, the Law Society, I sit on the Elder Law and Succession Committee. So, you know, you do get to see a lot of your peers generally, and that's what networking kind of looks like. I mean, networking is not often for a particular end goal. Like, it's really just, you know, building bridges.
It's usually just an opportunity for people to get together and make professional connections.
Yeah.
That's how I try and take some of the awkwardness out of it. In terms of networking for me.
Don't call it networking.
Yeah. This is networking almost right now.
I like socializing.
Networking for me is, so they're internal, I guess internal and external. So internally, EY does a lot of like networking events, and I mean, they're pretty social. It's just an opportunity for people to get together and connect and figure out what we're all doing, what type of work we're doing. And I mean, I think that's important for us internally anyway, because of the type of work that we do, and I'm conscious of time, so I'll just give a very brief overview, but where consultants are often on engagements for fairly, or it can be short or long periods of time. So an engagement can last from maybe 2 or 3, 4 months to maybe a year or more with just the one client. So it's important sometimes for us to understand what kind of internal opportunities there are. But then again, and kind of drawing on that, that insight that our engagements can be quite long. We get to know our clients really well. We usually work alongside them at their client site. And in that way, we actually kind of network almost all the time, but we get invited to kind of their events as well. So yeah, it's more of I like to see it as more of a social type thing as opposed to a formal networking setting.
I tend to agree with that, in that I see a lot of it happen around the office, and generally it has nothing to do with work. So a way you get remembered is by, you know, if you watch football, or a solicitor came in, was sharing their love for the donut department downstairs, and that leaves an impression more than something like talking about work sometimes. So
yeah, absolutely.
I definitely agree with that. All right, I'm about to hand back to Mike, but I would just like to say thank you so much to our panel for giving up so much of your time to talk to us. I can definitely say I learned a lot during this. So
thanks for having
everyone.
us.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me.
Hi. So yeah, just before we wrap up, thanks again to all the panelists. Really great discussion. I kind of learned a lot as well from you guys. And thank you, Sebastian, for facilitating the discussion. I think we all learned something out from this session, and we hope to do more of these in the coming months. Sorry. Thanks for everyone who attended. This video is recorded, so if you want to go over some of the points that was discussed during this discussion, head over to our socials, and it will be posted up on there. If you want to share the video as well to some of your friends and colleagues that you think might benefit from this, please feel free to do so. And if you have any questions, please feel free to contact us at any time and we'll try to accommodate as much as we can. Thanks, everyone.